Thank you, Honor, Jacqueline, Drew. I see a very eclectic mix of people, including some of the usual suspects. So welcome to Singapore, and I know I've heard some people have been trying to catch sleep in the Chronarium. Some people have been talking to the Merlion. You've been doing crazy things, but I think we need some crazies, otherwise society never progresses. I was reflecting that Singapore must be crazy to have a foreign minister who's involved with the Smart Nation project. But there is actually a pattern to the madness. My favorite quote on the future actually is from a former oil minister of Saudi Arabia, Sheikh Zaki Yamani. His quote, and let me just read it so I make sure I don't mangle it. And listen to this carefully. The Stone Age did not end for lack of stone. The Stone Age did not end for lack of stone. And he goes on to say, the oil age will end long before the world runs out of oil. So hold this thought in your mind, because what I intend to do in the next few minutes is to quickly gallop through energy, water, food, manufacturing, logistics, everything as a software service, and finally, what a smart nation and what a smart world is about. So I've got quite a lot to gallop through. So let's start with energy, since we started off by talking about oil. I believe we are on the cusp of an energy revolution, and there are a couple of reasons for this. We've all heard about climate change. The level of carbon dioxide in our air at 400 parts per million is at a level that the world has not experienced for about 800,000 years. At 800,000 years, I think most scientists will accept that predates human beings. So the world actually has been through far greater environmental contortions. The world will survive. That's not the real question. The question is whether human beings will survive and the quality of life. That's just one aspect of it. The other thing driving the energy revolution is going to be something which unfortunately you all would have seen in the air in Singapore. Haze, pollution. In fact, it is pollution rather than carbon dioxide which is going to drive most governments to improve and to push the energy revolution. Because carbon dioxide, the global commons, elections are all local. What pushes politicians is the pressure of people in their own home voting districts. So it's about pollution. The next reason why there's going to be an energy revolution is because actually most of the technology is already available. Renewables, photovoltaic cells, harvesting geothermal energy, hydroelectricity. Even nuclear energy, as controversial as it sounds, the holy grail for nuclear energy is actually fusion. There are projects ongoing right now that hasn't been achieved yet. But you can imagine a world where almost limitless, renewable, clean, commercially viable energy becomes available. And once that happens, many, many things change. And in fact, if you think about renewable energy, even today, even in Singapore, with the current prices of photovoltaic cells, it's at or near grid parity, which means the price per electron, per kilowatt hour, taken from the plug in your wall or from a renewable source is competitive. But the other missing link in the energy revolution is really about energy storage. And that's why what Elon Musk and Tesla is doing is not so much the car, but actually about energy storage. Because if energy storage can be solved, you bring down the price of energy even further than where it is today. At that point, it becomes perfectly logical to have clean, secure, stable source of energy which you can use on tap. It will transform politics. Since I'm in foreign affairs, it will transform politics, because the Western world's obsession with the Middle East in the last 2 centuries, actually it's one, since the early 1900s when oil was discovered and used in cars, it's really been about energy, about fossil fuels. When that happens, everything changes. One of the first things that will change after the energy revolution sweeps through actually is water. Now, obviously, I've got a vested interest because I used to be the minister in charge of water. But you see, in Singapore, the next available drop of water is not going to just come from the sky. We've got to desalinate the water or recycle used water. And in Singapore, the equation today is 3.5 kilowatt hour of energy to produce 1 cubic meter of drinkable water. 1 cubic meter of drinkable water is 1,000 liters, or to convert it into Coke cans, it's 3,000 cans of Coke. And even using today's technology, the price of producing that water, pumping it and delivering it to the tap in your house or in your hotel, and then treating the used water, the full long-run marginal cost of that system in Singapore is slightly over $2 for 3,000 Coke cans worth of drinkable water. And if you stop to think about it, that is actually an affordable rate. In fact, in Singapore, we've had that rate since 1999, and we haven't had to change the price since then. Now, I'm not in a position to say prices will never change, but the key point here is that that price has been held constant because of advances in technology. And as energy becomes more cost-effective, more available, and as membrane technology, material science improves, that price is going to fall further. And what that basically means is that on a global scale, the question of sustainable water for cities is substantially solved. The part that is not yet solved for water is water for agriculture, for irrigation. For that, I think you need a factor of reduction in price of at least 1 or 2 orders of magnitude, which means at least 10 to 100 times cheaper than where we're at. But if you bear in mind the fact that irrigation does not need water at a quality which is good enough to drink, it can be done. And in fact, there are countries in the world which are addressing this issue. But the point I'm raising here is that once you get energy and then you get water solved, the next big challenge that's going to be solved is food and agriculture. And we know that, in fact, if we don't make these transitions, there will be a food crisis in the world. We've got 7 billion human beings. Never before has the world had so many of us crawling on the same size globe. It's going to go up to about 9 billion by the end of the century. We need a revolution in food. I'm an optimist. I think the fact that energy and water can be solved, then the fact that I think we will get another revolution. The next agricultural revolution is not just going to be about growing food on land. It's going to be about hydroponics. It's going to be about aquaculture. It's going to be about harvesting proteins from the sea, simply because 3/4 of our surface area in the earth is sea, it's not land. It's going to be about higher tech farming. I'll give you another example. Today, I'm not sure how many of you here are vegetarians, but most of us eat meat. And there's this inconvenient problem with meat that first it's very inefficient because by the time the calories move up the food chain, there's a lot of losses. It's not a very efficient process. And there's also that messy process of having to slaughter the poor animal. But we will get to a world, and I think within our lifetimes, we will be consuming proteins from tissue culture rather than from animal slaughter. The technology is already there. It will be further refined. The chefs will have to improve the taste, but it will happen. So you'll get energy, water, food. What else? Since this is about the future of everything, I'm going to take the license to gallop through. What else is going to change? I think the next thing that is changing is manufacturing and logistics chains. The onset of 3D printing or additive manufacturing. This is what we have today, with our little 3D printers at home. It's just the beginning. That plus robotics. And robotics is about to undergo a further transformation. It's not just the robotic arms that you see in factories, but the general purpose robots, which will herald a revolution very similar to the general purpose personal computers that we've had. When they were first invented, people said, why do you need a personal computer? Or when personal computers became commonplace, even someone like Bill Gates said, why would you need more than 64 or 640 kilobytes of memory? But it transformed everything. If you think now about some of the implications of 3D printing and of the robotic revolution, it means, my own hypothesis is that it means the end of mass production, and it will be replaced by the age of mass customization. Now, what do I mean by this? For the last 2.5 centuries, the Industrial Revolution has been about making things out of cookie cutters. The more cookies you could make, mass production, the greater economies of scale you could achieve, the lower your cost, and as long as you charge higher than your cost, you made a profit. The big capitalists made fortunes from that. But I think the fact that now we can print something, we can customize something, it can fit you and your personality exactly. It can reflect your mood of the day, the mood of the hour. And value is in the fact that you have something unique rather than something which everybody has. And my favorite example is blue jeans. Everyone has got blue jeans. But you will not find in any conference everyone wearing exactly the same 2 jeans. And the reason why distressed jeans are even more expensive than perfectly manicured, perfectly made jeans is because every distressed jean is unique. Now, what are the commercial and logistics implications of the end of the age of mass production and the onset of the age of mass customization? Right, not very far from where we are, is one of the world's largest container ports. And you can in fact get a good index of the world economy by just assessing the height of the containers that are stacked in the port of Singapore. But right now, containers are fairly efficient use of ships, but because they contain manufactured goods, and the goods are already packed, most of containers actually contain just air, because it's not very efficient to ship manufactured goods. Can you imagine a future where almost everything you use and wear is printed at home? What will be in containers of container ships in the future? Will it be the manufactured products surrounded by air so it doesn't break? Or will we be shipping polymers like polylactone, which is the raw ingredient you use in today's 3D printers, or food ingredients, because we'll be 3D printing our food, and electronics, hardware? You get what I mean? The one level of resolution down, we'll be shipping the raw ingredients of 3D printers rather than manufactured goods. Now, that's not the only thing that will be shipped across the world. In fact, the interesting aside then is that the next generation will say that our generation was crazy to burn oil instead of using hydrocarbons as the basis to manufacture the monomers and the polymers that we use for additive manufacturing. So that's one aside. But the other point is that instead of shipping finished goods, we'll be shipping ingredients, but more importantly, we'll be transmitting blueprints and designs. Because you'll download the design, you'll customize it, modify it to suit your own personal preferences, and then you manufacture it, you print it out at home. It means profits are likely to accrue more to designers rather than people just shipping or making standardized items. There will be an economic revolution as well. And the point I'm trying to make here is that if, and this is a dangerous statement, if you're not an engineer or a coder or a designer or an artist, your job's at risk. And it's not just politicians who are at risk. Everyone, think about this, who's not able to create something, design something, draw something, make something that resonates with people's souls, who is not able to communicate that in an effective way, who's not able to use his hands and his minds to build something beautiful, useful, and relevant. There's going to be a great disintermediation in society. Many good middle-class white-collar work is going to disappear because the information revolution is not just going to transform manufacturing and logistics. It is, I've already said that. But we'll move on to this concept of everything as a software service. Education, conferences, healthcare, transport, all these are areas which are ripe and in fact overdue for a revolution in the way it is delivered, the way it is customized, and the way you derive value from it. So if any of us, I used to be an eye surgeon. I mean, if we just think we can do business as usual in the way we deliver healthcare or in the way we teach, I'm still on leave from the university. If I think after I leave politics, I can just go and practice ophthalmology the way I used to, or teach in the university the way I used to, I think I'm going to be sorely disappointed. The point I'm making is that the real impact of the digital revolution is only just beginning. And it's going to transform not just the hardware bits of it, but the ultimate software, which currently resides in our human minds. And then the next revolution, which is also beginning, is, I'm reading a very interesting book now. It's called Superintelligence. And it makes the point that we may be the last generation that improves human minds. Think about it. If computers can do more than just win Jeopardy, if computers can do more than just enable massive online gaming and education, if computers can make a more accurate diagnosis of your condition than I can as a doctor, if computers can teach better, even for robotic dolls, there's a revolution going on in pets. But you all know as well as I do, the thing that sells the biggest on the internet is something far more basic than that. It's sex. Can you imagine the onset of robotic, responsive, always available dolls? I know it's many men's fantasy, but I'm sure women will know what to do with them too. I'm just giving you that as a facetious but not completely crazy idea. That's the real killer app, the killer product on the internet. The point I'm making is that everything's going to change. if everything is a software service, even the service industry, the middle class, white-collar work is all going to be at risk. So when Singapore sets out on our journey for being a smart nation, we do so with a combination of paranoia and opportunism. That we are at an inflection point, no less profound than when the agricultural revolution was replaced by the industrial revolution. When everything changed from the countryside to the city, from extended families to nuclear families, from farms to factories. That revolution 250 years ago changed the world, changed our lives, changed our societies, changed our politics. If you agree with me that this combination of ongoing revolutions in energy, water, food, manufacturing, logistics, thinking, big data, if you agree with me that we are on the verge of perhaps an even bigger revolution, then everything's going to change again. So what's Singapore's response? We position ourselves as a working model of the future, a prototype. If you've got a crazy idea, bring it here, let's test it. Put it in practice. Let's see whether anyone talks to your talking Malayan. A new chronarium, new forms of sleep. Let's see whether anyone really falls asleep in your pod. In other words, bring an idea, make it, test it, prove it. If it works, like what we did for water, we didn't invent reverse osmosis, but we upscaled it to a national solution. Today we've got a couple of hundred water companies. They can go all over the world. Their calling card is, I'm from Singapore, I solved the water challenge. I may be of some help to you. That's the same concept here. We can't be Silicon Valley, but there's some things which we can do faster and more effectively here than we can even in Silicon Valley. You need to have a fiber or 2 fibers in every home. That's done. Jacqueline will do it. You want the fastest broadband with the lowest latency in the world, Jacqueline must do that. Because to me, these are the trivial, if you want every lamppost to be smart, every lamppost to be a beacon, every traffic light to be aware, we ought to do that. You want to talk about the Internet of Things. Globally, 30 to 50 billion objects. In Singapore, I've told Jacqueline, prepare to give me 30 million smart objects very, very soon, preferably yesterday, because you want to prototype the future of the Internet of Everything. And in Singapore, everything should be on our Internet, because this has to be the ideal test lab. And the advantage of dealing with Singapore is that we're small, we're compact, there's a single layer of government. Our Prime Minister can code. I can code a little bit or enough to appreciate your source code. And that's why we're also moving to an open data, open source society. Because Drew just whispered to me that actually this future everything project is actually a Trojan horse. He's actually a subversive who's trying to change the world and change society. And what he told me, and I think it's worth repeating, if you live in a world in which citizens are just meant to be passive consumers, all you can do, if you're not satisfied, is to complain. And if you are angry enough, sometimes revolutions get started. But we believe, he believes and I believe, and here I'm going to take a risk of putting words in your mouth, that if we can create a society of hackers, makers, creatives, everyone, if there's something which you're not happy with, some desire or ambition not yet fulfilled, don't wait. Make it, create it, test it. Use us as a living lab of the future. It creates a completely different tone of society. Instead of fearing the future and waiting for things to happen to you or for someone else to do something to you. Be active, be creative, make it, improve it, create the future. So we have in our hands actually the tools and the opportunity, and I would suggest to you that Singapore is the ideal place to make the future of everything. So thank you all for being here. Thank you for being in Singapore.